Imagine you just finished a long, hard day at work. You're meeting up with colleagues at a restaurant and your food has just arrived. You look longingly at your steak as you cut into that first slice. The alluring aroma protrudes your nostrils, and as you bring that first bite up to your lips, just as you part your mouth to take in that delicious, warm, juicy steak, a blanket is placed over you and your dinner. This sounds absurd, but it happens daily to breastfeeding mothers and their children. I can only imagine that the absurdity that you would feel is how that child must feel. Today I'm going to talk to you about breastfeeding in public. I'm going to give you the side of those opposed and those for breastfeeding in public. And then I'm going to give you a question as to why this is even an issue at all. So first I'm going to go with the argument of those opposed to breastfeeding in public. The loudest argument that I have heard is for the modesty of the woman that is breastfeeding and those surrounding her. It is socially unacceptable for people to be naked in public. So that is basically the root of that argument, is it is immodest or socially unacceptable for a woman to expose her breast in public. The next is a false concern for the child and the mother. Some may say something to the effect of, wouldn't you be more comfortable with some privacy? Basically asking the child and the mother to leave the public atmosphere and possibly go to a side room or a bathroom, a fitting room, their car, basically anywhere that the public does not have to be in the presence of a breastfeeding woman and her child. Now that you've heard the side of those opposed, I'm going to switch the view and give you those ideas of those in favor of breastfeeding in public. I'm going to start with the main function of the breast, which according to the Visual MD website, in an article called Breast Function, imagine that, breast function is feeding infants. That is the main function of a woman's breast, is to feed their kin. So it's extremely natural for women to feed their children using their breasts. The next is relatively ridiculous that it needs to be stated, but eating in public is socially acceptable for all human beings. So I don't have any research as to why children eating in public is unacceptable. I'm going to quickly move on to why this is an issue. In a survey conducted by the Center for Disease Control in 2004, 73% of mothers in America tried breastfeeding. In 6 months, there were only 41% that were still breastfeeding. That's a pretty drastic drop from 73% to 41% in 6 months. I have to ask, why did the percentage drop so low? I believe part of the drop is because for some, they are tired of being told how, when, and where they should feed their children. Basically, they're tired of the shame that society and other individuals have put on them and that is associated with breastfeeding. My question to you is, why is it okay in our culture, in our country, to have sexualized breasts present in daily life, but not functional breasts? Sally Mars, the former director of creative services at McCain, New York, has been quoted as saying that breast for success, it's a play on words of the old saying, dress for success. She's referring to advertisements. I've read about many sexualized advertisement articles. One is the media have sexualized breasts, and that's from the Toronto Star, the old newspaper from 1996, so this is a long way coming. And then also, this one, the proof is in the pudding with this title, The Breast of Advertisement, basically stating the best ways to advertise to Americans. That was in a New York edition of a book back in 2012. So, still pretty current. Also, I'd like to share a little anecdote with you. Last year, a mother and her child were asked to leave Victoria's Secret for breastfeeding. An associate came up to the woman and told her that if she could please leave because she was making the customers uncomfortable, that her naked breast was making the customers uncomfortable. In a Victoria's Secret store, where from the outside of the store, you don't even need to enter the store, and all you see are women's breasts. But there it is the sexualization of a breast is much more socially acceptable than the functional use of a breast. So the next time you're compelled to ask a mother and child to leave the room to feed, I hope you can remember this speech and imagine yourself eating your meal under a blanket, or God forbid in a restroom, sitting on the toilet seat. I talked about the views of those who are opposed to breastfeeding. I've also countered that with those who are for breastfeeding. And then lastly, I left you with the question as to why is there an issue at all with breastfeeding in public? I'll leave you with a quote that I read from a parenting magazine some time ago. So loosely quoted, and I'm sorry, this is just from my personal experience. It is more important to provide food for your child than to care about what other people think.